Hey folks, it's Carl over at HoonsAHealthy.com. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Ask the Expert. So today I'm real pleased to have a very special guest on the program. He's a master instructor for TRX. That's actually where I met him in Albany when I was getting my TRX certification. He's a Ignite 360 master trainer, BOSU master trainer, also on the Surge and Development team and master trainer. Is that correct?
Yep.
Right? Okay.
Yes, sir.
And presenter for Real Rider. And he's also the owner and founder and director of movement at the Performance Locker in Alpena, Michigan. And I'm very pleased to have Casey Stutzman with me. Thank you, Casey, for being here. And,
thanks, Carl.
I know I first met you in Albany about maybe 2.5 years ago when I was doing the TRX certification. And I have to say, I learned so much from that day out there. You're a great trainer. You're a great teacher. So
thanks, man.
On to actually doing countless TRX fitness classes and then implementing into my training as I can. So I appreciate your great teaching.
I appreciate that, man. Thank you.
So I know you've been busy out there in Alpena, Michigan. You're doing a lot of great things. And so today we have been talking beforehand, communicating and coming up with ideas for topic matter. And I really like what you were thinking about here, these three issues that we're going to hit on today. So let's get right into it. You wanna?
I'm in.
Let's do it. All right. So I love this. Topic number one, having more purpose behind what we do, like exercise selection, workout design, and talking about how this goes hand in hand with a better understanding of the system, the particular system that we're trying to improve. Why don't you take it away and enlighten us on this, because this is an issue I could talk about all day.
Right. I think a lot of people like yourself kind of could. I love our industry. I love the fitness industry. And I love it because it's a group of passionate, driven, dedicated people that want to use their gifts and their passion and their knowledge to help and empower other people through ways that we've been empowered. We have no shortness of amazing people in our industry. We have no shortness of motivation and passion and drive. I feel sometimes, though, as an industry where we miss the boat a little bit is maybe we don't always head in the right direction. And I think a big part of that comes from not necessarily always looking at why we're doing something, or just doing something because that's the way it's been done or that's what someone showed us, but not always spending the time to really dig in and go, okay, well, why do we do that? And is that the best way? And is there a better way? So for me, I think purpose really starts with, like you said a second ago, kind of understanding the system. So here's how I look at it. Like, if my car breaks down, if I go and take it to a mechanic, and that mechanic has no idea what a piston head is from an O-ring, and has no idea how a combustible engine works, I don't want that mechanic fixing my car. So I think in our industry, we have to understand the engine. We have to understand the body and the workings and the physiology and the anatomy and the biomechanics. We are presented with this engine that we're trying to fix or we're trying to get better. And, let's say you don't do any corrective exercise or anything like that, and you're just a strength conditioning coach or a group exercise instructor, whatever it is. You're trying to get people stronger, fitter, faster. You are trying to make improvements on a system. So in order to do that, I have to understand the system so I can figure out where there's breakdowns or what are going to be the best exercises. The more I understand the system or the engine, the better I can train it, and the more purposeful my training becomes. So I'll give you a great example. What is an exercise that most people use to strengthen the abdominals? What's the big one? You see people doing thousands of them every day.
Oh, crunches?
All day. But does that really strengthen the abdominals? Is that what we want? I mean, if we look at how the trunk is built, we can, for the most part, agree that the trunk is built to keep the spine stable and protected. So you could make the argument that perhaps stability, resisting force or change, is a little bit more important than strength. Or we build strength on top of stability. When we look at something like a crunch, it's more of a strength-based exercise. Now, it doesn't make it a bad exercise, but sometimes we're putting the cart in front of the horse. Maybe we're trying to focus too much on strength and not enough on stability. And at the end of the day, do the abs work by themselves? No. They're one piece. They're one part of the cog in the wheel of all the muscles in the trunk that help to create neutral spine, resist force, resist change, and do all these other things. So do I want to just hammer the abdominals? So my point is, when we start to ask these questions and we start to dig down these different roads, it just makes us stop and go, is that the best exercise? Is that exactly what I want to do? Opposed to just going on YouTube and finding, so-and-so's 10-minute killer core workout and writing it down verbatim and then putting my client through it. And I think it's a little bit more trying to understand, why did I choose that exercise? Why specifically? What am I trying to achieve? What am I gaining? What is it doing? How is it stressing the body? How is it helping the body? What potential red flags are there? When is it a bad idea? And just all these questions that I don't think we always take the time to ask. I think we look at something and just go, yep, that's a good one. So another great example is upright rows. And any of these are a can of worms that I understand I'm opening, and I'm sure there's a lot of your listeners or readers who are going to be like, that guy's an idiot, and here's why. And that's okay.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if you talk to most physical therapists and demonstrate an upright row to them, they wince and they go, that's not a movement that they like to see, because they know how the shoulder functions, and that's basically asking for an impingement. But yet, how many strength workouts do we have upright rows and stuff in? And it's not because it's just maybe not always taking those extra steps of asking why. What is the purpose of this exercise? What am I trying to do? And someone might say, well, an upright row helps to build the shoulder girdle into elevation and helps to build the traps. Okay, great. Do most people need stronger traps and to be elevating their shoulders, considering most people already spend most of their time like this? So again, there's no right or wrong answer, and I'm not trying to say something's just bad, but we should always lead down that line of questioning. Like, okay, do I need my client who walks in with shoulders like this to do upright rows? Do I need more elevation out of their scap? Maybe not. If someone walks in and they're all hunched over, I don't know if you see it well on my little screen here, but someone's all hunched over and they're all rounded in that spine, do we need to hammer them with a ton of crunches?
Yeah, right.
Maybe not. So we just start to look at, like, what is the purpose of what we're doing? And then it goes with workouts too. Tabatas, great example. Like, really popular, really easy to implement. A lot of people really, really like them. But why? What are you doing in a Tabata? When does it fit? When does it not fit? What do I need to do beforehand? What do I need to do after? What is the intensity like? Like, what is the purpose of doing a Tabata? Is it power? Is it speed? Is it strength? Is it endurance? So all of a sudden, all these questions start to help us choose, okay, then what modalities, what exercises, what are my goals? And it can start to create a more purposeful environment. And for example, like when I'm looking at something like a Tabata, that's endurance all day long. So, people, we can talk about power and endurance and all these things, but when you are working twice as long as you're resting, that's endurance. It's just how that works. And then when you put volume on top of it, so yes, it's relatively short, but the thing that a Tabata gives us is we get to work in intense intervals, and then we get just a brief little bit of recovery, but it's still more endurance training. And it can be high-intensity endurance training. It can be threshold endurance training, but at the end of the day, it's still endurance training. So, then all of a sudden, like, okay, jump ropes, heavy ropes, rowers, bikes, running, like, this makes sense, right? That fits perfectly into that paradigm. And again, that understanding the purpose of what I'm doing helps to drive my equipment selection, my exercise selection, and everything else that I want to do. And at the end of the day, and here's, I think, the best part of all this, is we can actually help people get better. When we're doing things the right way, when we as professionals look and go, hey, is this the best way? Am I doing harm? Am I doing more harm than good? Am I doing good? Yeah. That's what helps our clients that's what helps them be successful, and that's what helps them see results. And, the tricky part for you and I and anybody else listening to this is, success breeds success. So we have to figure out, how can you make people win? How can you create an environment of success where they're winning a little bit, and then that win turns into more winning and more winning and more winning, and we can continue to keep moving them forward.
Yeah, those are great points. And that's when I was talking with Rick Ritchie about this a couple of months ago. We were talking about the importance of assessments. So, because
yes,
there's a lot of great people in our business. There's some amazing people. And unfortunately, there are a lot of trainers who, they do the assessment and then no matter what, bench or whatever, and they already have shoulders rounded forward and their chest is overactive and tight, and the first thing they do after assessment is bench or whatever. And in those cases, I see a lot of more harm being done than good. They're making it worse.
I agree. He brings up an amazing point. A big part of that training with purpose, and that I feel is assessment. And I kind of cower in shame when I admit that for years I never really took people through comprehensive assessments. And when I finally made the decision to start doing that, how much of a game changer it's been in my training. And when I say a game changer, I mean that I'm watching my clients get better. I'm watching them get hurt less. I'm watching them have less pain. I'm watching them make improvements. And it really all stems from these assessments. And that really is the foundation of training with purpose. So if you come in, now here at Performance Locker, we choose to use the FMS. That's the one that works for us. So everybody who comes in the door goes through an FMS. It's a great system. It's simple. It's easy. It gives me exactly what I need. It's very, very easy to follow. So someone comes in, and if they show shoulder mobility issues on the FMS, guess what? We're not loading overhead pressing. So it doesn't mean that we don't have those exercises in our workouts. I just know for that person, we need to do something different. Because again, that exercise doesn't fit the purpose for that person because we know that there's a fault in that movement, or they don't have the mobility for it or the stability for it or whatever it is. But I think having a good assessment system and sticking with it is a huge part of training with purpose.
Yeah, FMS is great. That's great.
I'm a fan.
I think I was talking about that with Perry Nicholson recently. You familiar with Perry?
I am, actually. Perry and I got a chance to meet. Oh, nice. I got to meet Perry in New Jersey at a TRX Rip training course. He's a great cat. He's got a great podcast and Facebook page and some wonderful information that I follow. He's definitely one of the people in the industry I really look up to.
That's when I first heard about FMS, so it's really cool to hear you talk about it too. Something I want to learn more about as well.
It was no joke, like game changer for me, because again it was that missing piece for me. Yeah. It's like in my mind I had a really good grasp on corrective exercise, and I felt like I could see things that maybe some other people couldn't see. I could see, the hip doing this or this doing this, but at the end of the day, what I was finding is sometimes if something was wrong, I didn't always know where to start. And I would guess, and sometimes I'd guess right, and that person would get better, and sometimes I'd guess wrong, and it's like beating your head against the wall. So another huge thing the FMS gave me was not only like this kind of checklist system where I know exactly what the issues are, but then it gives me a hierarchy that I know exactly what I need to address first. And I found it to be incredibly helpful.
That's cool. That's great. Well, this ties in with a couple, actually everything ties in together anyways in what we do, but I'm going to move along to the next point that you mentioned that we discussed, which is choosing the right tools for the job and having a better understanding of the equipment so we get the most out of it. Mm-hmm. Enlighten us.
I think it goes back to the mechanic, right? Like we talked about that earlier, and if I'm trying to like undo a big giant lug nut with a hammer, it's not going to work. Good point. It doesn't mean that I can't get the bolt out. I might figure out a way, but why wouldn't I just grab a socket wrench? That's probably going to be a much more efficient way to get that job done. So. Another thing that we have no shortness of in our industry are toys. We have toys for days. There's a new product that comes out all the time. Yeah. And, I love toys. I think like all of us do. Like we see something new and we're like, ooh, what's that? We want to explore and we want to experiment and we want to see what's going on. But at the end of the day, I really like to take all these different toys or all these different tools and kind of start to categorize them. Like, okay, what does this do? And then based on what that does, I'm going to look at what other tools do the same thing. I'm going to decide, like, is that something that's unique or does something that something else can't do? So, like, for example, if I'm using a med ball, I love med ball work, but I think sometimes it's overused, not overused, slightly misused a little bit. So when I'm looking at med ball training, it's not resistance training, in my mind. A med ball is a really unique shape, and it either rebounds or doesn't, or, you have all these different ones you can choose with. But because of the shape and because of what it is, I can throw it, and I can slam it, and I can chop it, and I can swing it, and I can do all these things, and I can do them at rapid speeds and rapid tempo. And I think too many times people look at something like a med ball as a resistance tool because it has weight. And yes, to an extent it is, but I like to look at it more as like a speed acceleration type tool because of the unique things I can do with it. So like when we use med balls here, 4 pounds, 6 pounds, 8 pounds, like even my elite people, like my big, strong, fast people, they're using like 8-pound med balls because I want speed and I want acceleration. And if I put too heavy a ball in their hand, all of a sudden it all slows down. So I think it's easy to look at something like a med ball, think resistance, and then give people a 20-pound med ball or a 25 or a 30. And yes, there are exercises that those heavier balls are appropriate for, but for me, general scope, I like lighter because I like speed, velocity, and acceleration. So understanding the tool helps me better use it. Kettlebells, I think, are another great example. I love kettlebells, and me, like anybody else, right? You find a new tool, and what do? You go try and figure out 4,000 exercises for that tool. You're like, oh, you could do this, and you could do this, and you could use it here. Oh, no, I can use it here, and I can use it on the BOSU here. But then after a while, I start to look at, okay, like, what do kettlebells give me? All right, it's a unique shape so that if I'm doing anything in rack position or overhead, it forces me to align in a position where I can stabilize the weight, especially because the bell sits on the outside of the hand. So I don't have, it weighs outside the arm. So if I start to take the arm off center, I feel it start to drop. So because of the unique shape, because of the handles and all these things, there's like a small list. I know there's thousands of potential kettlebell exercises, but there's a small list of ones that are incredibly unique to that tool that I can't really do with anything else. And all of them are either stability-based, strength-based, or explosive-based. And so that's what we use it for. So like when we look at our kettlebell usage, we do different loads of squats, different loads of deadlifts, we do Turkish get-ups, we do arm bars, and we do swings and cleans and snatches, and that's pretty much it. It doesn't mean that it can't do more, but like that's what it's really good at. And so when I look at using the kettlebell, it's either for power or stability or strength, which in my mind, strength stability kind of filter together a little bit. Right. But that's it. And I'm not using it for speed training. I found, like the TRX and the Rip Trainer, great examples. Actually, the Rip Trainer is a better example for me. When I first got introduced to the Rip Trainer, I was like, yeah, it's cool. Like it's not like I wasn't sold, but it just, I didn't get it at first. Like it had to be explained to me. So then when I went through the course and learned how to use it, and when I was, taught, okay, hey, this tool helps to build stability because it's asymmetrically loaded. And it helps to build rotational power because first we're learning to resist rotation, then we can move through rotation. Then we can look at developing athletic power and speed because we're linking movements. And something like the Rip Samurai Strike, we have a squat, a rotation, a pivot, a push, and a pull happening simultaneously. Now, all of a sudden, I started to understand what the tool does, and now it's one of my all-time favorite tools. So the problem when I first got introduced to it I just didn't totally understand it. But then once I understood it, now all of a sudden it's like, okay. And now making it programmable. Now it's easy for me to program because I'm like, okay, this person has really good sagittal plane stability, and I want to start to build stability in the frontal plane or the transverse plane. So, boom, let's go to the Rip Trainer because it's asymmetrically loaded and blah, 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 blah. So understanding the tool not only helps me to use it better, I can program it better, I can make it more effective, and then I can choose it at the right time for the right person.
Right, that's cool. Actually, that's something I need to look into as the RIP trainer. I had it at a gym I worked at before I started working at Syracuse University. We don't have it at SU, but I still like to learn about it because it looks like a great tool. Some of the videos I've seen and all that, it looks like a fantastic tool. And I hadn't really thought about it because it's asymmetrically loaded, which makes it unique.
Yes. Very, very.
Too, but in that way in particular, it fascinates me. Interesting. So,
yeah, it's definitely something I would check out.
I want to move on to the third thing here. And actually it ties in with the first one. We kind of already talked about it, but let's see if we can tweak a little bit more information out of this because you're giving us such great information here as it is today. I really appreciate this. You got me thinking.
My pleasure, man.
I tell you, it's funny. I do these fitness classes at SU. I do several group classes. And one thing I've been thinking of for stations, I really want to do a kettlebell something or other, right? We don't have kettlebells in that particular gym. Oh, we have medicine balls up to like 20 pounds. I can use that for a swing. I can use that for some different things. So thank you for that.
No problem. No problem.
So, yeah, this is great. So anyways, number 3, one of the best ways to make people better is to stop doing the things that are making their problems worse. And again, we kind of hit on this already, but I should think of some more examples of this because I know a lot of people have tight hip flexors, for example, because they sit all day. Learning how to identify their problems, which we can do through assessments, and what to do for them and with them once we've identified the problems. Anything more you can think of that you want to share about this particular subject?
It's another area that I don't always think as an industry we do an amazing job kind of looking at, right? So like someone comes in and even if in our mind, if that person is weak, so we want to get them stronger, right? So we just start throwing exercises at them, right? Oh, your lunges stink, so we got to lunge, and we got to do weighted lunges. And so the idea is, and again, our hearts are in the right place. The idea is you overload a movement, a muscle, or whatever, and it grows back stronger, faster, yada, yada, right? And yes, that is 100% true. That's exactly what we do. But what if there's a crack in the foundation? So if I call a contractor to put a second story on my house, and if he goes in the basement and sees a crack on my foundation, and if he still puts that second story on, that crack's going to get worse. And eventually I'm going to have bigger problems. Now, a good contractor would fix the crack before putting the second story on. So the way I look at it, if someone comes in with movement defaults, deficiencies, imbalances, dysfunctions, if I try and build strength, speed, power, whatever on top of this dysfunction, all I'm doing is making the crack worse. I'm putting them at a greater risk for injury, maybe not now, maybe down the road, maybe in 10 years, maybe next week. I don't know, but I know it's probably not a great idea. So starting to look at, and that's where that assessment comes in. So having something that I can point to and say, hey, you showed that we're not clean in that lunging pattern on our FMS. So if we can't lunge, not fatigued, with our own body weight, do I really want a kettlebell in your hands when you're lunging? Or do I want dumbbells in your hands? Or do I want jump lunges? Probably not, because I'm going to assume that if you can't do it fresh with no weight, it's going to get worse with weight or when you're tired. And then if it's not functioning right, we're just going to assume that stress is going to other areas and the body's just going to take a beating. And so potentially we are now doing more harm than good. We're not loading the right areas. So I think that's where a lot of times in fitness people have issues. Someone's got a bad back or bad knees, and we just keep layering exercise on top of these dysfunctional movements, and then things get worse. So what I found for a lot of our people is if we figure out where their cracks in their foundation are, and if we get rid of those things, they start getting better. We just simply get rid of the things that are making them worse. So like, for example, let's say in the FMS shows problems in the trunk stability push-up. It means that planking pressing off the ground, any of that stuff is functioning properly. So that person should not be doing long unassisted planks. That person should not be doing push-ups. That person should not be doing heavy chest pressing because we know it's off. So if I can get rid of those things, or if they're doing them outside of here in their own routine, if I can get them to stop doing those, or if I can get them to do it in a way that's conducive to good movement, so like maybe I elevate their planks, like bring their hands up on a step or something to make it easier, put a band around their waist, or we don't push up on the push-ups, we just do eccentric loading, whatever it is. But I figured out a way to make that work well. I'm no longer stressing the structure in areas in a negative way. And they start to get better because I'm taking away that negative stress. But again, it all comes down to assessment. I have to know what's going on. I have to know where these red flag areas are. And so if I can give them suggestions. So another example is there's a few of the tests on the MS that if they show as red flags mean running is a bad idea. So no matter how unpopular it makes me, if someone comes in and they're like, hey, I'm a runner and my knees have been bothering me on mile 7, and if the test shows us that the hips aren't functioning properly, the best piece of advice I can give that person is like, hey, we're going to need to back off on the running. For now, we're not going to cut it out of your life entirely. We're going to try and clean this up as fast as we can, but it might take some time, and then we'll get you back on the road. But if I can stop doing what's making it hurt or making it flare up, it will start to get better. But otherwise, we just keep pushing through the pain and pushing through, and we keep charging forward, and we just end up making it worse. We keep the body or the joint or the muscle in a constant state of inflammation, and then it further guards it, and then all the surrounding areas have to work even harder to make up for the slack, and then something breaks.
Right. Yeah, good point on that. And that's something that I see trainers leaving out a lot. Again, we talked about this before, and doing more damage than good, which is not what we're in the business for.
It's not.
I think for all of us, our hearts are in the right place. We want to do the right things, but we don't always do that.
Right. And it's hard. It's really, really, really hard. So someone comes in for a workout, and they're ready to go, and they want to push, and it is so hard as a trainer to go to that person who could be very fit looking. And that's the interesting thing about the FMS. It has nothing to do with fitness. Right. So some of the people that have had the biggest struggles on the FMS test are some of my biggest, strongest, fittest people. So going to that person and being like, hey, I know everybody else is doing an overhead split jerk, but you're going to be doing this instead, that's hard. You want people to, you want to let people go and, get all rah-rah and go after it, but that's what makes a true professional, is that when you can make the unpopular decision. Think about how your parents raised you, right? You didn't like everything that they ever did, but looking back, you're like, you know what, I'm really glad that they did that because they had the foresight, they had the knowledge, and they knew that, hey, you're better off not doing that thing. And sometimes it can make us unpopular. I would love to say that I have never lost a client. I'd be lying. And in fact, I've lost clients because they think my workouts are too easy. And I simply point to whatever's in front of us as, well, your workouts are easy because this, and this. So this, and this tells me you're not ready for planks, you're not ready for overhead presses, you're not ready for heavy squats. I know you've been doing those things, but we have data here that says that it's not a great idea. And some people don't like you for it. And some people are willing to take their money and go somewhere else. And it's a hard decision to make at the end of the day as a professional to let that person go. But it's the best decision that we can make because it builds credibility, it builds reputation. Your clients that decide to stay are going to be better served, and they will bring more clients in. It reminds me of a story with Southwest Airlines when they were getting up and running. I think this was like in the 80s or 90s. And Southwest, their big thing was fun. They wanted to be the fun airline, right? And they had all these things, and they had fun stewardesses, and it was supposed to be fun and make flying enjoyable and affordable and for the common man. And so they would joke around and have fun with their safety announcements. And this one woman wrote a very scathing letter to the head company and says, I think it's deplorable that you joke around with this, and it's not funny, and it's terrible, and I will never be flying your airline again. Now, Southwest could very easily go, we're really sorry, here's a free ticket, blah, blah, blah. They replied back with a very simple letter that said, we'll miss you. Because They knew that
That's good.
they couldn't make her happy because to do what she wanted would go against their core beliefs.
Yeah.
And so they made the hard decision and lost that client, but then that further strengthens their relationships with all the other clients and passengers that are there because they're fun and because of who they are.
And ultimately brings them more business. And, it's
Exactly.
interesting because when I look back to how I was training people, I have to even say literally 3 months ago, about 6 months ago, a year ago. I can't even believe I was training like that a year ago. And I hope it's always that way for me because I want to look back and feel that I've learned more so that I can help more. Because for me, it is all about helping people to get the most out of what they're looking for from me, where they can be more functional, feel better, and accomplish their goals safely and address exactly what you're saying. And so you've shared a lot today that's actually got me thinking about some things, which I appreciate.
You know what, Carl? That's a great place to be. Chris Frankel's got this quote, and I don't know if it's an original or he got it from somewhere, but he says, everything we know is wrong. We just use the best model that we have right now. And so if you go under that, I think that's a great place to be mentally, because then that means you're going to look back 6 months from now and say, oh my God, I can't believe I was doing that 6 months ago. But if you're able to do that, that means that you're willing to grow, look at new ideas, move forward, admit where you can be better. And that's a good place to be. I think the worst place to be is you look 5 years ago and say, man, I was awesome then. I'm still awesome. Because that means that we haven't progressed.
Well, what's interesting about this too is it's been an interesting process because this has caused the breakup of a couple of clients with me. We had agree that we're not going to work together because what I learned, I can't train them the way they want to be. They think they should be trained. And so it's caused actually 2 breakups in the past couple of months, and I wish them well. I want all the best for them, and I hope that wherever they're at, they find this, and they're always welcome to come back to me. But it won't be my way, and who knows? If it's 6 months from now, it could be completely different than it is now. But as long as they're growing and moving forward, so I can help them better, because talking with people like you, Dr. Perry, I know he really got me thinking a lot about a month ago. I met him down in New Jersey. I was like, whoa, what was I thinking about,
He will do that.
I appreciate all that you're sharing with us. Any last words of wisdom before we sign off here? Anything you want to share with people?
I really like how you kind of wrapped it up. It's just that it's okay to be wrong, and that's kind of you and I and everybody else listening to this. Like, we are in the business of being wrong. There's so much that we don't know. There's so much that we're learning. There's still so much we don't know about the body and movement. And, I think sometimes people stay within their own little world or their own little shell because they're so afraid that they're going to be wrong. And that's okay. It's all right to find something different. And it's okay to travel down that direction. And I think the fear is that if you go to your clients and say, hey, we're going to do this now instead of this because this is better, that they're going to go, whoa, then how come you had me doing this? What's the matter with you? Don't you know what you're doing? And that's not what happens. That's not what happens at all. In fact, they're like, wow, this cat is really... the amount of humility that takes to be able to say, you know what, we've been doing this. I think this way is going to work better for us. Let's try this. Yeah. That takes a lot. And that means that, deep in your heart, you have their best interest in mind. And that shows them that. And so, I guess if there's one thing that I could leave people with, it's like, it's all right to be wrong. It's okay. And again, everything we know is wrong. We're just doing the best with the model that we have right now.
That's a great quote. I like that a lot. Well, thank you so much, Casey, for taking the time out of your day, joining us here and sharing. I know that this is going to reach a lot of people, and I'm sure it's going to be really inspirational, insightful to a lot of people. That they'll learn a lot. I know I've learned a lot.
So I truly appreciate the opportunity, man. Thank you so much.
Oh, sure, yeah. And so, folks, thanks for tuning in. By the way, Casey, what is your website address?
Oh, it's just CaseyStutzman.com, CASCY. STUTZMAN.com.
I'll have that running across the screen and in the beginning and the end when I get done editing this. But again, thanks so much. So be sure, folks, to visit Casey at his website and check out HunzaHealthy.com. Again, thank you, Casey. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Have a great day.